We're going to be talking about episodes 7 and 8 here. Both very good episodes. One dealing with a funeral, and the other one kind of dealing with it's not really a missing person, as well, sort of, but what kind of happens when someone from a powerful house is even thought to be potentially dying for any reason. So very, very into it. I'm a sucker for sort of the political intrigue in the shows and the way people are trying to manipulate and gain power. And it's really cool because you're kind of like, oh man, this guy might be overstepping. Like, I would be careful. It's that kind of stuff that's really, really good.
Decorum, right? How to speak to specific people and being careful, and not just what you're saying, how you're saying it, your body language. And then also they really get the family dynamics done well too. Viserys, man, he's my bro.
I know, man.
I know,
dude. Episode 8, what an episode
it was.
So we'll see how this goes. I'm trying to make sure Premiere's working correct so we can get this going. We have a lot to really go over, but episode 7 opens with the funeral of Corlys's daughter, whose name slips my mind.
And I enjoy Corlys's daughter. Oh shoot! What? Lena? No. Lena? No.
Because Laenor's the son.
Yeah.
And
Troll Room, help us out.
There are a lot of names in this. That's the one thing I've been struggling with the show, and it's not really a criticism. It's more of just there are a lot of people to keep track of in this.
Naomi, that's her name.
Okay,
right?
No, I mean it's Nomi or Naomi, something like that. Anyway, so and we'll get into this guy. He plays quite a big role in episode 8, which is great. But we talk about setups and payoffs. This little scene right here plays a major part in one of the biggest moments in episode 8. It's really cool, and I love this. And I didn't catch it until the second time that I went back and watched this episode. But she says right there, the lady Lena leaves 2 trueborn daughters on the shore. Though their mother will not return from her voyage, they will all remain bound together in blood. Salt courses through Valyrian blood. Ours runs thick. And you just get this moment with Daemon. Ours runs true. And you get a moment where Daemon just starts laughing at him. And it's what a great...
Man, that body language, man, it's just so great. And then I also enjoyed, what was it? Was it Aegon? Who was just sitting there bored, like ready to get this over with.
Yeah, and each one of them, and man, that kid turns into a massive douche.
Yeah,
like he's one of those characters where like, as soon as he's he's a character that his downfall will probably be very satisfying.
Yeah,
which is something that I really do appreciate the show for, is that you have characters in the original series like Joffrey that it's like everyone was waiting around for him to finally get his comeuppance. Like, it's pretty great. And of course, Matt Smith proving once again in this and the next episode, he's one of the best,
Scene
man.
Stealer.
Yeah. Him and Patty Constantine, not Patty Jenkins, are both excellent character actors. They both are doing an amazing job in this show, and great. No matter where this goes after this season, there's at least some praise that can probably be heaped upon season 1 of House of the Dragon. We still got 2 episodes though, so we'll see.
And then there's that next scene of them all them talking in the courtyard right there.
Yeah.
And what was it that
Daemon says to...
He
says 2 things.
He says to Patty, to Viserys, he says that... Patty says the gods are cruel, and something along those lines. And then Daemon says back, it seems they've been most cruel to you.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find it.
It just works so well. He really just...
Oh, did I miss it?
Has just formed into the role, connected well, and exuded. And he's, again... a scene stealer, you know what I mean?
Man, where is it? Oh, is it right here? So he's looking at him,
Yep.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, again, something that is mentioned a lot about the show is that characters will just look at each other and you can get an idea of what they're thinking about in those moments. It's not just a single, it's not a, I miss you. Why do we never talk anymore? What, or whatever the case may be. And Daemon, who, again, we see as the show has progressed, one of the things that keeps us connected to him is that he cares about his family. His family is the most important thing to him. And what's interesting about it is that blood is not, for him, blood is not the factor, which I think the obviousness of that is shown in the next episode, where despite certain characters not being his actual blood, he cares for them deeply. And he, and it's not a good idea to cross his family. We'll just say that for now.
And then he has that line he gives to Otto, the leech comes back for more blood, I think. Something along those lines.
Yeah. So here, I think, I forgot how long this specific part went on. So they're giving, here it is.
Yeah.
Says, your girls are the very image of their mother, a comfort and an anguish. The gods can be cruel. It seems they've been especially cruel to you.
And he just
goes, he's like, yeah.
Oh, man. Even though Daemon is great because he's such a wild card because you never know what he's going to do. And you, again, separate from the Rings of Power, you have a mystery and, how's he going to respond? Because he's responded this way before and he's responded this way. And so it puts intrigue there. That's natural. It's not just, hey, look at this MacGuffin. And, hey, on the next episode, we're really going to tell you who these random wizard ladies are, or not Gandalf, or what's in the box, literally. So
this show cares about its character writing, which is just, it's a big deal to me. And they've done a very good job.
Yeah.
So he has that interaction, and then there's this other one. It's coming up in a minute. And of course, you were talking about this before. Aegon is drinking too much. Like they've continued to set up him.
He just doesn't care about the throne.
He doesn't care about anything. He
doesn't want it.
And he just gets worse, right? Because like at this point, you kind of feel for him. Or at least I did, where it's like you kind of understand like all the pressure that he's under, and his family is not.
Where's Aemond?
Aemond's another. He steals the show for me in episode 7, and then doesn't in 8, but he is very strong in 8, and I like where they're going with
him.
Yeah, and that you see the very intentional casting choice because he looks quite similar to Matt Smith. And the dynamic that they're potentially working on with those two characters.
And I enjoyed this scene between Lord Corlys and Rhaena, and her, saying, you just care about the history books, blood's thicker than water, sort of deal. And then he just says, the only blood isn't remembered in history, only names are. Yeah,
which is great, and she will remember that because it comes into play again and again. It's these you have almost a scale of the different setups and payoffs that happen in the show. Some of them are bigger than others. Some of the conversations lead to big payoffs. They take a little while. You have sort of everything building up to episode 5, like we've talked about in the past, and how a lot of that was the foundation for a lot of that was built up over the previous episodes. And then you have little things where they have this conversation, and then in the next episode, Rhaenys has remembered that. And it's something that's clearly guiding her in the next episode, and I appreciate that. It's good character writing.
I agree. I think the only thing I didn't like about this episode was the how the color grading, and it just seemed like reminded me of episode 3 from Game of Thrones, where you could hardly tell what was going on because they had it so dark in that episode.
Yeah, well, if again, just like in episode 3 with that that opening thing with Daemon where he's flying around on the dragon and it looks really really dark and you can't really tell. It's Sapochnik. That's his style, man.
Yeah, keep talking. I'm gonna close my blinds real fast.
So yeah, we have this great scene. I mean, we can kind of move on from this one because this is Rhaenys and her actress. I think in these past 2 episodes, they've stepped her up. Now she hasn't been in a lot of the show, but I'm happy she's around. She's really kind of come into her own in the last 2 episodes, and I've been enjoying her character. I've been enjoying everybody. Everybody in the show has been doing an excellent job. I think Rhaenyra and Alicent's actresses, especially after episode 8, I think completely bought in. Mm-hmm. And it was something I figured would be the case, that it was going to take a little bit of time for me to warm up to the 2 of them.
Yeah.
But we'll kind of get into some of that with episode 8 because I think Rhaenyra, they do a really good job of kind of spinning the focus back on Rhaenyra, and I think I'm wondering if this is what they're going to end up doing, where they'll play this sort of back and forth pendulum swing game with Alicent and Rhaenyra, where Rhaenyra doesn't start off looking so great. We're not really a fan of her. She's pretty selfish. All of that's going on. Alicent seems to be the one where you're like, man, I kind of feel for her. Like, she's kind of caught up in all of this. She's really naive, but she doesn't really have a choice.
Trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, her father's kind of pushing her into all of this stuff. And then we get to episode 8, and the pendulum seems to be swinging in the opposite direction now, because Alicent does a few things that, though they make sense for her character, and they make sense for the position that she's in and what she has to do, it does not take away from how terrible she acts in those situations. And it starts in this episode.
Yeah, and even with Corlys's brother, I can't remember his name, but you understand where he's coming from. We all know he's right. And so I felt for him. I'm like, yeah, he is right, but we see what happens in episode 8 to him when he sort of loses his he's the only one willing to speak truth that boldly, right? Yep. And what it costs you, and it's kind of a callback to Ned Stark in season 1. What gets him killed is doing the right thing, right? And so, but granted, it's
honorable
different.
thing.
Yeah, the honorable thing.
Yeah.
And how it doing the honorable thing ended up being his comeuppance. And so, and with Daemon and Rhaenyra, I'm like, oh no, incest.
Yeah, and well, everyone, I thought it was really funny. I saw a video of a guy who was like, these are the things that we kind of like come for in the show, that we show up to watch it every week, because these characters are incredibly flawed.
Yeah.
And no one in there, well, I won't say no one, because you know how people can be, but generally no one is like watching this like, oh yeah, like we're so happy this specific thing finally happened.
Yep.
But in the logic of the world, the 2 of them together makes the most sense.
Yeah.
They both know it. You know.
She isn't with him because it's interesting, because I don't think that she's necessarily with him because she just loves him and stuff like that, but because she's after her throne. That's her ultimate love, right? She's trying to secure her place, even though she does care for him.
She says
I'm just saying,
but episode 8 tells us something slightly different. Yeah.
Well, I will also say this. One of the things the show gets right is that, and I'm almost wondering too, if it would almost be, and I don't think it will based on the writing so far, but if it will be its downfall, I do think maybe having too many great characters can be a bad thing. And like too much of a good thing is a bad thing, sort of deal. But you understand each person's perspective and where they're coming from. Hold on.
Go back to that. Why?
I think it's good, like when you have someone like Jon Snow, or what was Baratheon, the guy
Stannis.
No, not Stannis, but the guy that got mad at the Red Witch chick for killing Stannis's daughter. What's his hand? Oh man, I can't think of his name. Bald head. Oh man. Anyway, it had some good characters that you rooted for, like Viserys would be in this in season 1,
right?
Generally speaking. And so,
are you saying good as in like honorable, altruistic type characters?
Yes, yeah, honorable, altruistic type characters.
Okay, yeah,
like,
you
generally speaking, their morals as a person.
I thought you meant like good performances from actors. Like, these characters are so good. Yeah, no, it's fine. I was just.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, because I was like, wait, I need some.
Tyler,
I need
Davos. That's who I was.
Davos. Yeah. Yeah, Sir Davos would definitely fall into that category, I think, because he's will. But the difference is that Davos was always willing to. He understood how things were played. He understood his role. And I'd have to go back and watch the last couple of seasons because his character kind of he sort of just disappears. Like he's not a major player after a certain point in the show. But yeah, he always has kind of understood that, which is the difference between him and some of the other characters who they rise above their station, they push too hard, and they don't realize that they're potentially putting their lives at stake because of that.
Right. So I think like ultimately that could end up being a downfall is if you don't have at least a few altruistic characters and even on the other opposite end, just straight up, I guess and again with Aegon, what they're doing, setting him up, and this last episode 8, being on the other side of that, just evil, is important.
What's interesting is that you see his progression, right? Because he's younger, he's basically just a drunk, he just wants to drink, he's obsessed with women, and those things are never addressed.
Yeah.
So no one's punishing him. He's getting away with everything because of his station.
You see what that leads to.
And you see exactly what it leads to when the problems when he was younger, they're allowed to manifest. And I imagine the same is actually true for I believe his brother's name is Aemond, right?
His brother's name is Aemond. That's a great point to put with Aegon. You see when left unchecked what for Aegon that's what it led to, but what it can potentially lead to is someone who is willing to take advantage of a woman like that,
Yeah. And we'll obviously get there, and if you've been watching the show, you know what we're talking about.
Yep. But yeah, so we get this scene you can barely see, and Aemond goes and takes Vhagar. That's his name, right?
I believe so. Yeah. We're
Vhagar.
Yeah.
So room. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Vhagar.
I like this a lot, and I mentioned this to you when we were talking about it last week. I'm fine with some of these shots that are as dark as they are. Some of this doesn't this doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
And it's not good that you can't see anything. And a lot of people were criticizing the show because they're like, oh, well, they need new lighting people. But I'm pretty sure this is post-production that's doing this. And they're like, well, it needs to be darker because it's at nighttime. Yeah. So yeah, but I like, and I just showed a shot of it. This whole thing with him and the dragon is really cool. I really like the way I think it's Vhagar, right? Let's see.
Yeah, it is Vhagar.
Vhagar, yeah. There's one shot in here. Between them. Yeah, let me see if I can find it. Like, this is so cool. I just really, really, really like the way that this looks.
You see he gets over his fear and he conquers it. And man, it just leads to he's essentially all of their power now.
Well, that's what I mean? That comes into play later on because we knew. Well, I knew just from listening to some other people, but Aemond loses his eye in this episode. His sister predicted that in the previous episode that he would gain a dragon, but he would lose an eye in the process. And she's actually. And we kind of skipped over it, but she's actually one of my favorite characters in the show because everyone's picked up now that she's giving little hints about what's coming next. It's just that little bit of like, ooh, especially because I haven't read the books and I don't know if it's just one book, but I haven't read the source material for this. And I like that because there's all these little things that are building up and you're like, oh, this thing from earlier, that's why this is happening now. And she had said that in the previous episode about him gaining a dragon but losing an eye. In this episode, she talked about the intertwining of the blacks and the greens, which is just foreshadowing for all of the stuff that happens in the next episode, and that it's kind of the beginning of the end for the Targaryen household. And I'm just gonna I'm gonna jump to it just for a second. She says in the most recent episode, she says, "Beware the beasts under the boards," or something like that. It's like below the floorboards, and I was just like, what? And I'm like, what is she talking about? It could be the rats. We know we've seen the rats a whole bunch. That could be the thing she's talking about. But I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm thinking with the rats, that's indicating a possible play coming. Because, like you said, I haven't read the source material, so
Yeah. Well, I'll mention this from the troll room because someone was asking that they don't understand that people were surprised Dany went nuts. It's not that she went nuts. It's that as far as, and I fall into this camp, as far as a lot of people are concerned, the way it happened at the end was ridiculous.
Yeah.
That it's like all of a sudden she's there, she hears a bell, and she decides to genocide an entire group of people, like men, women, and children, even though it's been established previously that she actually has some morals about the people that she'll kill. Now, I haven't watched the show in a long time, but it's on my list. I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to go back through the entire thing because I want it a little fresher in my memory. But yeah, that's what people are generally talking about when they criticize Dany. It's not that she did it, because everyone kind of had the idea that that's where they were headed with it, that it's been this foreshadowing that she was going to be as bad as, I believe, her father. I think the Mad King was her father. Obviously, he's related to her. I just can't remember what exactly it was. Yeah. Anyway, Aemond's great in this episode. I think he, like I had said before, he really steals the show. And then, of course, I was just waiting to see how he was going to lose his eye in the episode.
And it happened so well too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the choreography of that fight was better than anything we've seen in the Rings of Power.
Mm-hmm.
With a bunch of children.
yeah, exactly. So
like it made logical sense.
Here it is.
It was done well.
He comes swaggering in. Let me see if I might be able to play this just for a second. He comes swaggering in. And it's like, it's him, it's me. Just like the swagger that he has right there.
And Lady Elena's kids, Bela and I can't remember the other one's name, are mad. And, he gives them some lip.
More than that, he's
feeling himself. Oh, yeah, that's right. He attacked them first.
He slaps the crap out of one of them. So, where is it? Oh, they go at each other, pushes her down. She comes in, boom.
Yep.
Right? Boom. Knocks her down. Yeah, and it's so funny that, because you had just said this, but it's really funny that this was well choreographed compared to anything Galadriel's done in Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Anyone's done in Rings of Power, really. You can feel the punches. Oh, and I like to mention this when I remember to. One of the things that I think is underused in a lot of writing these days, because it's a hard subject to broach, but it's when either children get into these kind of violent situations together because of the world that they live in. I love it because of the stakes that are involved in that, because you have these kids who are supposed to be innocent, and that like kids getting murdered. Like one of the things I've brought up in the past is the remake of It, the first one, not the second one. One of the things I really loved about that movie in particular was that it's essentially about this monster hunting children, and the stakes are so much bigger when you have these innocent kids who are trying to solve an issue and they're falling victim to something like this. Mm-hmm. For me, it's always like ramped things up more, which is what I've really enjoyed about the episodes with the kids in them. Even with 8, now that they're a little older, mm-hmm. you can see the way that it's really unfortunate that's with everything that's happening to them, and that they're gonna be at conflict and lives are gonna be lost because of this. And it's all because their parents, in many ways, were way too prideful to actually deal with the situation.
Yeah. I think they get right really well in this show. The overspill, generally speaking, that the parents or the family will have on the kids, and you see in this show how Alicent and her views have infected her kids, and then vice versa with Rhaena and her kids, and what leads to this drama and this interaction between the kids hating each other.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get to the next episode.
And so
the spillover from that, man, just these subtle things within the show are great.
Yeah, and this fight is really good. Like, even this moment, Aemond picks up this rock, and I was like, "Oh my lord, is one of them out? Is it over?"
Yeah.
And he grabs some sand somewhere in here. He pulls. Right, we have to get the knife.
Yeah.
Gets him on the ground. He throws the sand, and his younger brother, is the one that finally takes his eye, and it's just so good. And it's such kind of an interesting scene too, because the white cloaks. Oh wait, they're the white cloaks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Kingsguard. They show up, and it's like, where were you all the whole time? Aren't y'all supposed to be guarding the princes? Yeah. And I like it. And I think it works for me mostly because you kind of get to see some of the incompetence of the Kingsguard.
And look how well his helmet fits.
I like his dude, I like their armor. I like their armor quite a bit. I don't always like that they have the helmets on, and I know they take them off for a lot of the main characters. It's funny because I've said the opposite about the dwarves in Rings of Power and those helmets that they're always wearing. It's like there's these two dwarves guarding all of Khazad-dûm, and they're constantly wearing these helmets. And I was like, I'd actually like to see the dwarves and the different like characters who were living here, even if it's just for a second. Yeah. So it's now we get the whole thing where they've all come together, and
oh man, the tension just
that's
rising.
That's brutal too. I don't know if we've talked about the makeup design in the show, but I think they do a really good job with that.
Yeah, that looks really good. And especially in the next episode,
Excuse me.
In every episode, but especially in the next episode too, Viserys and how they just de-age him down and everything, man. The makeup design in the show looks really good, and costume design too.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this scene because you see the line that's drawn in the sand and where everyone stands. You know what I mean? And who's against who. And it happens in such a natural way, in a progressive way, rather than just randomly occurring, which kind of is how Rings of Power goes.
Yeah, and you get to see Alicent. Alicent is sense. Yeah, Alicent is acting the way that her character should. It's so funny. She gets a lot of crap on the internet. Like everybody loves Rhaenyra and hates Alicent. And I get it. I understand why people don't like her or whatever, but it's like, y'all, she's doing what she believes is best. And people seem to forget that Otto has and is manipulating her. I realized after episode 8, I was like, I think he's been playing behind the scenes more than originally thought. He's gone back and forth where you're like, oh, he was just the hand. He was trying to gain power. But then in that most recent episode, you're like, man, has he been manipulating things and working with things behind the scenes even more than we're aware of?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, is he a bigger player than I was thinking he was? But she's legitimately upset about this. It's completely reasonable that her son loses an eye, and the children who are not, that she knows, even if she's not allowed to really talk about it, they're not true-born Targaryens. Attack, like one of them attacks and takes her son's eye.
Yeah,
she's well within her right to feel the way that she does.
Yep. With the exception of wanting to take their, I mean, I understand where she's coming from, right? But to actually want to take another child's eye,
that's this world.
The motherly love. You know?
And then this is really good too because she's talking to Aegon, and this is that tension that's constantly been between the two of them, to the point that in the next episode she's like, you're not even my son.
Yeah. You are no son of mine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty great. So we get the whole, they're arguing, they're going over the whole deal. This is where the
comes in.
This is where the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's children is brought up, and it gets close because we know what happens if you go too far.
We know it's Alicent stirring it.
Yep. And she's not the only one. She doesn't. Yeah. Well, we'll get there. I don't want to talk about it yet. But it's man, so good that it ultimately. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
And you see that Aemond knows that he heard it from his mom.
Oh, it's
right?
The looks.
The way he looks.
And everybody, and everybody knows.
Aegon.
Yep.
To protect her. Yep.
They that's what I'm saying, is that they do a good job. It's like the characters act in ways that make sense based on how they're established. It's great.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why it's so good, and it's not about a character being altruistic as much as it is about being well written and being likable, not because they're doing good things, but because you want to see where this is headed. You want to see the way that these clashing personalities end up affecting everyone's lives, or who's going to end up where and on what side, like that whole deal. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And this plays a big part in what's to come, especially in the next episode, because Aemond is that character in the next episode where you're like, I have no idea what this dude's going to do in this in here. You can't read his expression necessarily.
It's a wild card. Another one.
Yep. So ultimately, it ends with Alicent wanting an eye from one of the sons. She tells Kristen Cole to do it, and for a minute there, I was like, "Oh, that dude's about to try to do this." But he's actually
the other Knights Guard look at him like,
"Yep." He's like,
better not.
No, don't get anywhere near this situation." And to the point where even when Kristen, let's see. So she goes in there. The kids are like freaking out, and he rushes through. Daemon finally acting. He sees Kristen Cole going over there. Doesn't do much. He just stops him. Yep. He's like, "Hey, man, it's like this is not. You do not want to get mixed up in that."
Yep.
So yeah,
they see, man, him just being butthurt for so long for what Rhaenyra did to him when she was 16. Like, dude, get over it. Okay,
so here's the thing. This is a conversation that I had with Tyler a couple weeks ago about this.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, were so jarred by Kristen's turn, but I think that's the point. I think the whole point was that it's pretty realistic for a character that is seemingly, like, on the outside, he's upstanding, he's below his station, so everything that he's doing, it's about kind of rising to this new thing. Mm-hmm. And the minute that something isn't going his way, he just loses it.
I like the it's not in this episode, but in the previous episode when he's walking with Alicent and he calls her the C word. Uh-huh. And I don't like it, but I think it just encompasses the character so well and their interaction, because he's like, "Oh yeah, we both hate the same person," but she's like, "Bro, you took it too far, man." You know what I mean? It's like, we both hate the same person, but dang, man.
Yeah, and well, it's something that it's like
that.
Yeah, it's like, hey,
I'm still a woman too, bro.
Well, and it's also a situation of, it's like, hey, she's a princess, like you can't speak about her that way. Yeah. There are rules to these things. We talk about rising above your station, going too far. So anyway, yeah, she gets cut. Alicent realizes that she's gone too far in this situation, and we get confirmation of that when Otto comes through. So yeah, they have their whole talk.
Hey, listen, Tyler, we're just gonna let David think that Sir Kristen Cole is a good character in this show. It's okay.
What does he mean by a bad character? Does he mean that he's poorly written, or that he's not a good guy?
Written. I think that jump is just it's difficult for me to, again, it's something I can overlook because of the other writing in the show. I think that's a little bit much, and then the plot point of he hits the prince before they're married, so the Lord's consort, and then he also killed the prince, the Night of Kisses too. So I think, like, not explaining that, even though I know it's like, saying, well, it's because of Alicent and how much power she had and stuff. I think, again, but we don't have to rehash that. We already did.
Right. Well, it's one of those situations that they still haven't really brought that back up, and that could be, again, I'd have to go back and watch it again, but not having them mention so far that, like, sort of giving some explanation as to why everything turned out that way would have been nice, for sure.
Yeah.
But he's kind of been in the background since then. And I do like the actor who plays him and plays that character well. Right.
Like him in the scenes, you feel the tensions rise. You know what I mean?
Right. So that's mostly it. We get this interaction with Rhaenyra and Laenor. And he's kind of coming to this understanding that he hasn't been a good father. Yeah, he wants to change it. And as we find out at the end of the episode, it's a little too late for that. And so they essentially established this plan to get rid of him. And this is the moment that
you think that she's going to murder him.
Yeah, and
kill him.
Does she know he's not dead?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
I think what it alludes to is that she and Daemon planned, and including the dialogue we got in the last episode.
Right.
Planned for not to actually kill him. Obviously off screen, because what we get on screen is that you think they are.
Yeah.
But off screen, it was to set him free, because we get clear that there's obviously that dichotomy within him that he's fighting, to where he wants to be a good husband, right? But he still wants to, but he's sacrificing that. He's at the expense of his happiness and his joy. Yeah. In that dialogue we got with her. And so this is a way for, him to be free of that and to be able to live his life as he sees fit. Right. So
yeah, because she has this line right here where she says the sea is an escape. And so I think, like, what she's saying to him is, to Daemon is, by doing this, people are going to think that we murdered him. People are going to, come after us. You know what I mean? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair. I guess in hindsight, with everything that happens, that makes the most sense that they were both aware of it. I was just curious if, like, Daemon was trying to keep that, like, what he does completely hidden from everyone, because, it's like the more people that know, the more likely a situation might erupt in their faces later on. Especially because it's so sensitive, because the Valyrians don't know what happens to him. Like, they think he's dead.
But they did murder that innocent person.
Well, again, yeah, that's the thing, is that we've established. Well, we established this, that Daemon is willing to do whatever it takes for his family. He doesn't. If you are not like in that inner circle for him, he doesn't care.
Your life is nothing.
Yeah, he's willing to do whatever it takes. It's like, oh, this random person that works for the Valyrians, like he works in their house, or whoever he was. It's like, whatever.
I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with the Veil in a coming episode. You know what I mean? From his ex-wife. What's going to happen?
You think they're gonna go back into that, or do you think it's pretty much resolved?
Just like her uncle or family member being like, talking all that crap to him in episode 6. Yeah. And so I wonder if that conflict, because of present there, is going to, come back to haunt. Yeah, repercussions from that.
It's possible. The only reason I would say they may not broach the subject again is because by that point, we've jumped like 15 years.
Oh, that's true.
Because Rhaenyra is like, so she's 33, I think, in episode 8. And it was 20 years since all of that went down. So she's somewhere in the range of like 15 to 18 when she's supposed to marry Laenor. So it's been a long time. And so you would think that if they were planning on doing something, it would have happened already. And, maybe it will. It would be interesting to see that pop up again. And it's very possible, because this is a Game of Thrones after all. So maybe they've been biding their time to deal with the situation. But yeah, so essentially what ends up happening is that they stage this whole thing with a witness to fake Laenor's death. It's terrible for them too. I mean, like, great acting on her part. I'm very, very happy with her in these.
Lord Corlys too, man.
Yeah, he's been great.
Oh yeah.
So they go through their whole the whole thing or whatever, and then pretty much the last thing. Oh yeah.
Them getting
Damon
married.
and Rhaenyra get married. They're the children. The family tree for this is quite a bit confusing. Like I was taken back in episode 8 when Aemond's like, "Hello, nephews," and I was like, "Oh yeah, they are his nephews." It's like it's such an odd thing to kind of.
It really is.
Yeah. So this all comes together too. We saw earlier when they were all at the funeral. I think it's Luke was holding the hand of one of the girls to comfort her, but it's a little bit of foreshadowing to what's to come. Obviously, they end up getting closer over time now that they're family. And again, it's weird for us, but when you're talking about the bloodlines and the family names, keeping certain things together, it makes the most logical sense for how the world works. It's just,
right.
Yeah, it's the politics of being part of like essentially royalty or part of a high family in this world, which is great. It's just one of those consistent things. Like, it would be terrible, I think, if all of these characters were constantly doing what Rhaenyra tried to do early on, where she's like, I just want to marry for love. because what's great about that is you even get to see the outcome of something like that.
And the consequences that it led to.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you
being
were
an outlier like that.
Yeah. And again, despite your feelings about the way that some of that goes down and the need for some more explanation, that's what you kind of take away from that situation, is that her trying to do what she wanted in a way led to the death of someone.
And the other thing you have to remember too is that this is based off of the medieval time period, right? And so a lot of time, majority of the time, marriages were for political alliances, establishing power and stuff. And so, you can't insert your 2022 worldview into it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You have to understand the time period for what it is. And so,
not to mention that Rhaenyra and Daemon are totally like in love with each other, and they've been setting that up since pretty much episode 1. Like that's just what it is. Like
and that's a hard
they're
one.
Into the old.
He's so much older than her when she's
like
teenage
13
girl.
And he's in his mid-20s or so. Dude, that's the way it's... Dude, Viserys almost married a 12-year-old. Like that. And that's the thing that would have been the best thing for the realm. Yeah. Like you have to imagine that if he had actually gone through with that, how much of this would have never been a problem.
Yeah, right. if he did the wrong thing.
Well, if he had... wrong is kind of a subjective term when we're talking about this, because we're not talking about your morality. We're talking about what would have been best for the realm in that situation. Because if you think about it, like Viserys, being the honorable one, thought the exact same way that we do, where it's like, dude, you can't marry this child,
right? Now look what happened.
And it's like it leads to potentially the destruction of the houses, because he didn't want to essentially settle certain matters that were going to make characters angry. And then trying to rely on Rhaenyra to have because you got to look at it this way too, right? Like Laenor, we knew that he was gay. We knew that their marriage was a farce to try to keep the families together. She for whatever reason, I don't think they give us an exact reason, but they weren't able to have children, which caused a problem, which led to her being with Harwin Strong, right? Mm-hmm. And having children with them, which led to the bastard situation, and the children, like Alicent knowing that and telling that to her kids, and the bitterness that is building up is what's leading to this ultimate downfall. Yep. And if he had never married Alicent, it wouldn't have led to what happens at the end of episode 8, that seems to be leading to Alicent either being naive and not knowing what he was talking about, or hearing that and deciding, I'm going to use that to my advantage, which we will get to. So it's great, man. Like we can't talk about this stuff with Rings of Power. That doesn't exist. Things in Rings of Power just happen because the plot needs them to happen. There's no build up. It's so good.
Point A occurs out of nowhere, so that point B can happen.
Exactly. So, and then we get this final scene for episode 7 where Laenor has shaved and he's going off with his lover
to Essos.
Yeah. So, do you think this will come back into play?
Oh man, it'd be interesting if it does.
Good. I was pretty happy that the detail of him shaving his head, because his hair is very unique, and it would have been pretty obvious who he was. And word gets around even on the other side of the ocean. All right, so we're on to episode 8. Okay, so a lot of people are saying this is their favorite. Now, we haven't seen the next 2 episodes, and traditionally, episode 9, the penultimate episode of a Game of Thrones season. Now, I say traditionally, meaning the first 5, I think, through 6, season 6. Wherever they stopped doing 10 episodes is when they kind of started screwing with that a little bit. But episode 9, that's the major episode for Ned Stark. A lot of the major battles tend to happen in episode 9. It's where the plot starts to
amps up.
Yeah, it's that final ramp. And then the last episode is the one that's sort of closing out the season, that's doing a lot of setup for what's to come.
Yep.
So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that in the next episode. So I'm looking forward to it if they hold true to that. But where's this one kind of sit for you?
dude, man.
Because I was curious. I wasn't.
I think it
wasn't
is
sure.
my favorite. I think it's hard to say. I have to go back and watch them all again. But man, it's up there. You know what I mean? It's just, I mean, it again, like the last episode, I was audibly talking to the screen with my wife, and again in this episode, same thing. You know what I mean? You know, and I just feel for Viserys. I think and I feel that I can relate to him so much because he just wants peace. You know what I mean? He's just like, can we get along?
Please.
Yeah. Like, just can we just have peace? And it's genuine too. It's like not just for me. I want y'all to get along, because if y'all don't, it's going to lead to the downfall of the realm. It's not going to be good for the kingdom and our name as well.
Yeah, I agree. And so we have some stuff that was clearly set up in the previous episode where, Vaemond. I was like, what was this guy's name? So Vaemond, the brother of Corlys, believes that he's the one that should take over the seat at Driftmark. And he plays a major part in this episode, which we'll get into. But that's what we're getting, is that Corlys has been injured at sea. We're not given a lot of details about exactly what's going on. They seem to be purposely.
He got like sliced in the
neck or something, and then
he got a fever from it,
and he fell overboard.
Yeah, and that fever is the main thing that they're worried about, because Vaemond says, I've seen people half his age die from it. So,
and this guy, I understand his position, which is really interesting about this, but man, this is that thing. It's like when you
overplaying his hand.
You push too hard. You weren't patient, and I think that's one of the things that hurts him in this episode, is that it's like his brother
strategy.
Yeah, his brother isn't dead, but he should know. Vaemond should know the wishes of his brother and what's supposed to happen with Driftmark, and the idea being that it's Luke and what's his younger brother's name? Jace. That Jace is the one that's supposed to take over Driftmark if Corlys dies.
No, Luke is.
I thought Luke was the older brother. Isn't Lucerys?
I thought Lucerys was the one that was supposed to take over Driftwood.
Okay. Either
maybe
way,
I'm wrong.
One
of them.
The younger brother is supposed to be taking over. Let's see here. And he knows, because everyone knows, and that's okay. So let me ask you this before we keep going with this. Now that we're kind of deep into the Rhaenyra's children not being of pure blood or Valyrian blood or whatever, and this coming up with Driftmark, how are you feeling about the whole bastard situation? Because you know how it was supposed to be more. There was supposed to be a little more questioning of it. Yeah. Could be, maybe not, maybe more subtle hints, and then they just they decided to go with the no, this is exactly what you think it is.
What happened?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I think the intrigue would have been even better if you would have had just one of them have the brunette hair, and then two of them have
silver
silver hair. Yeah. And to really maybe it's just an outlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there could maybe just do something that made it a little more, because it's possible that they could have developed the mother's features more.
Yep.
And then even if it was all three of them, they look like their mother, but and you're like, well, everyone's like, all right, but we know about Lucerys. We know his what do they call it? He prefers the goose to the duck. You know?
Well, yeah, and I think that's the point of, if they would have done just one of them having brown hair, it leaves more questioning there. Whereas all three of them, as Allison says, is an insult to the crown. Everyone knows, it's three is impossible. You're not going to have three outliers, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the route I would have gone with, but I don't hate it.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't really hate it either. It's more something I go back and forth with, where I'm like, man, it would have been interesting if there was at least a little bit of question of the inheritance, so that it gives you get especially with Vaemond in this case, it's you kind of see both sides of it, where it's man, it might not be the case. You're really digging into something that's not very good. Though obviously it doesn't really matter, and I think ultimately it being more of a subplot for why everything is going on is totally fine.
It creates more intrigue, right? Just naturally, because now we as the audience don't know either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It creates even doubt for us. But I think like whereas with here in this scene, you understand where Vaemond is coming from, because even his brother is just blinded by history, right?
And greed.
His name to go down in the history books, whereas Vaemond is more concerned about his house and his
heritage,
actually for his family and for his family in the sense
blood
of
matters to
the
him.
actual blood.
Yeah.
Whereas his brother, Lord Coriolis, is for his family, but in the sense of power and history and being remembered in that sense. So I don't think it would be fair to say that Lord Coriolis doesn't care about his family. You know what I mean?
Oh no, I think he definitely does, and I think he cares about him so much that
just in a different way.
The question of succession doesn't really matter to him.
Yep.
It's like because like he says, the name is the only thing that matters. The history books will only remember the name.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. We head over to Dragonstone. Really, I liked the shot, the kind of sweeping shot over the top of Dragonstone and into the back, and you see Daemon here. He's coming down to get eggs for his new children. 2 born and 1 on the way. You get Aegon, younger Aegon. I'm pretty sure Aegon.
Yeah, young Aegon.
Viserys. And then I can't remember. I guess they haven't decided on a name for the unborn child yet. But that scene was so good too, and we'll get there. But I was really happy with that. Everything with Viserys in this episode. This is his episode. Steals the show from everyone. Even like Matt Smith takes it for a couple minutes, but it's Viserys' episode for sure.
Yeah.
So really into this, like he's one of the things I really like about Daemon's character is that he's not just this kind of one, and this is something I was worried about. I don't know if you remember, but earlier on when we were reviewing this for episode 1, 2, maybe 3, I was worried he was going to be semi one-dimensional. Like I was like, oh, he's cool. I like that he's so aggressive and willing to like go to all sorts of points to do what's necessary or what he thinks is that he's supposed to do. But I was worried he might end up being sort of just like, ooh, he's just the bad guy,
Yeah.
He's the bad boy or whatever. But he's got some dimension to him that I really like, where he kind of is a family man, and like no matter what you think of how all of that is playing out, he has his own set of like beliefs.
Right.
And what matters to him. And I like that. It's nice to see a character that's just kind of fleshed out.
Yeah.
And there's so many of them in the show. I go back to him because he's one of my favorites. So we get to see the different, maybe you were right. Perhaps that's enough. Maybe that is Jace. Because that's what she calls him, right? Okay, so I was wrong. So Luke is the one that'll inherit the Driftmark. And Jace is because this is the older brother. Right here. I don't expect you to learn High Valyrian in a day, Jace. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of the now older brothers?
I like them.
Did it work for you?
It did. It worked for me. I think too, being able to see them in contrast to Alicent's children and the coming conflict that they're going to have was nice too. It's
interesting because it makes you wonder about how he leaves me in the middle of this.
I wasn't leaving. I was just shutting my door. It had cracked open.
It's interesting to see because this is one of the things that I've heard people are saying now, that if they were kind of more on Alicent's side, this episode has now switched them some, because you see sort of the parenting styles, if you will, where Rhaenyra's children seem to be growing up more stable, and Alicent's her 2 sons are crazy. Yeah, they are completely off their hinge.
Yeah, and you also get that moment with realizing what Aegon has done, and that girl was Aegon forced himself upon her, and she doesn't. She just says, "Hey, I believe you," but what if other people may not believe you? Now you can take that to mean like, hey, if we say this to anyone else, other people will say this and this and this about you as far as the time period. You can also take that to mean, is Alicent trying to threaten her to not say anything to protect Aegon?
Yeah.
Or a little bit of both. But I think too, just here's some money for your troubles, and just
she's just dealing with the situation.
Yeah. Is it that Alicent's trying to protect her child, or is it Alicent's trying to protect her as far as the young lady?
Oh.
Or is it both? You know what I mean? Like, hey, if you say something, I believe you, but because of the patriarchal society we're in.
She knows it. She knows it happened.
Yeah,
it's not
she knows it. Yeah. She believes her.
She knows her son.
Is she not doing anything more because of, what other people may say, because there's no evidence in the sense of it's just her word versus his word?
Well, she knows the girl will end up dead for that. And she also can't have, because he's the eldest, he's the one who, in her mind, potentially will inherit the throne.
She can't have anything to stain that.
Yeah, he's the one who's the head. He's the first son. Like, whatever happens, he's the one who will inherit everything.
Yeah.
She can't have the rumors flying around, because you see what it did to Rhaenyra.
Mm-hmm.
All of that comes into play, right? It's like one of the great things about the show is that characters remember things that happen. It's not, their actions are based off of the things that happened before, and I still love the fact that you can point back to that scene where Otto is basically like, if you do not do something, Rhaenyra will murder your children, right? And so that's been in her head the whole time. It's why she finally started playing the game. It's why she's doing everything that she's doing, even what we're probably going to see in the next episode. And it's like, that's the thing that maybe even gives her the excuse to try to usurp the power from Rhaenyra. Because she knows, and she's playing the game, and in the same way that, and I guess we can just hop to it since we're talking about it. So they don't get met. We see that Otto was the one that was behind that. They go in, and we get our first look at Viserys, and it's this really interesting scene where, again, Daemon caring about his brother, and this has kind of been a thing, like a running sort of like theme with Daemon and the way that he sees his family and the way he sees his brother. He doesn't like the weakness that he sees in his brother from time to time when he disagrees with the way that he's ruled, or whatever the case may be. And this is one of those moments where, instead of Daemon talking about, like, kind of caring for the situation, he immediately tries to get into the politics. He immediately tries to talk about this whole situation that's going down, despite the fact that Viserys is obviously out of his. Yeah, he's out of it because of the milk of the poppy.
Yeah, and you see Daemon notice that and confront Alicent on it,
which is great.
Because at the end of the day, he cares about his brother. Yeah,
he's like, it's like he can't even remember what was it he says, or he's like, he can't remember your name, and he's like, can you even remember his, or something like that? Like, it's just those little things, man, where he is direct and to the point, and it cuts clean. Let's see.
He doesn't really care either. He's fine with, again, because it boils underneath his skin, seeing, terrible things done to his family.
Yep.
And you see his love for his brother really shine through in this episode, and it's more poignant because of the end of the episode too.
Yep.
It's really a callback to how the relationship first came about to us in episode 1.
And here's the shot where he finds out that Rhaenyra's named one of the sons Viserys. Which is
Viserys
great.
is having it rough, man.
Poor Viserys, because it's like, yeah.
And if we find out one of the Maesters is behind, this disease that's causing it, or
I wonder if they'll leave it up in the air.
Yeah.
As just like a questioning kind of thing of what happened to him. Was this a natural, like, his body just came across this thing? Was something? Was he poisoned early on, but it was like a really, really slow decay?
Yeah. Or did the Maesters not really, could they have taken care of it to begin with, but the main Maester didn't because of X, Y, and Z? You know what I mean?
Yep. And I am firmly in the camp of not appreciating that a lot of people think that he was a terrible king, because I don't think that was the case.
I don't think so either.
I think obviously he made mistakes. Like, it's not about that. He wasn't perfect. The idea, though, that he understood the need for peace, and that peace and his family were the two most important things to him, and that he was stubborn in certain regards and blindsided by the love for his family, whether it's Alicent, Rhaenyra, any of their children, whatever the case may be. It's like that was the most important thing to him, was keeping them together. I think it makes him one of the more honorable characters in the show. It makes him really, I mean, you know, he just gets a very good arc through all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible that the Maesters are behind this, and that plays into some of the lore where the Maesters don't like the Targaryens because of their
dealings,
incests. Yeah. The things that are, you know, to keep the blood pure, because they're a part of I think the New Gods, if I remember correctly, and that is not something that is looked upon with favor or overlooked lightly, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, great moment here. Like, you know, they really do this like slow burn of, you know, I had forgotten about halfway through the episode that he had this cloth over part of his face. Mm-hmm. And so that reveal, I was like, oh, that's why they did that. Because he has the mask, and I'm like, okay, so something's wrong with that side of his face. And then when they finally do the reveal of it or whatever, it's like,
dude, it was so nice, right?
Oh yeah, here's the suspicion of like the milk of the poppy, and that, you know, and this is something that happens a lot, where it's like maybe you're not trying to kill someone, but you want them out of commission, you drug them up.
Yeah,
you make it hard for them to do anything. Mm-hmm.
And then this is the
here's
scene between them that we get, and which we pretty much already talked about. Yeah, and
what's funny is I had seen some people think that Alicent had poisoned her, but this is just a callback to when
Viserys sent her the moon tea to Rhaenyra.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about
just in case.
Yeah, and it's like, and this is why, you know, God, and I know people will probably argue about this too, but when the showrunners are constantly like, this is supposed to be about like feminism or whatever, or like the feminist movement, it's like Alicent is treating this situation the exact same way as the king did. Like it's one of those things that's like, you can't have these situations because first of all, you see what happens with bastards in this. They're poorly treated if they're not royalty, and you don't want to have any sort of potential where this girl comes back or someone uses this girl and her son later to try to cause problems for the royal family.
Yeah.
It's better to just deal with the situation. And that's the thing, is it's you're not supposed to like that she's doing this. Yeah. You know, you're not, and again, like you were saying before, what Alicent is doing here is, maybe it's about the girl, maybe it's about her son. It's probably,
maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's probably more about the power play of what am I trying to say? The perception of her family, the perception of her children. That seems to be the most important thing. In the same way that when the whole thing was going down with Rhaenyra and the question of whether she had lost her maidenhood and what had happened with Daemon, all of that caused major problems. And she is aware of this, and she's dealing with the situation before anything can even happen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And then she confronts him, and this is when, you know, she told him, "Hey, you're no son of mine." And then we get this scene between all of them and Alicent, Daemon,
Scar,
and Rhaenyra, and I think Otto comes in, doesn't she? Doesn't he? I don't know, but
this is when this was that shot, the dialogue where because they bring up that no one met them when they arrived.
Yeah.
And I don't think Alicent knew, right? Because Otto did that. Maybe
Without
she did.
her.
Yeah.
Knew what? I'm sorry. Refresh my memory. You don't think Alicent knew?
I wasn't sure if Alicent knew that her father basically set it up so that no one was there to greet them.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe she did. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't.
Right.
And then, here it is. So it says King Viserys' condition. It's worsened since you last saw him. The pain.
Right.
milk of the poppy, while the high towers warm his throne. Rhaenyra, if you would see him without it, almost blind with suffering. Alicent, I have no doubt it was an act of purest mercy.
The mockery behind it that you know he's...
Yeah.
It just connects so well, but tell me, for the king's suffering, did the Maesters also prescribe the removal of Targaryen heraldry?
The Targaryen heraldry, yeah, because you notice like all the stars, in there.
Otto Hightower.
Well, so it's
the Hightower star?
No, it's the religion.
The religion.
Yeah, it's the new gods. I think
the 7 gods.
Yeah.
Is it the 7 gods?
I that might be. Man, it's been a while. So the emblem of the 7, serve only to guide us on certain path, to remind us of higher authority, and then, here it is. But be assured, the Father is just as he commands me to forget the accusations you have hurled in this room today. Maybe it wasn't there. Well, there's a certain point where he talks, where he kind of like goes after her because of what they're doing to her, and that's just part of it. So we get Luke and Jace back down here,
looking at him.
Yep. This
see that they're still everyone still knows.
Yep.
Yep. Even in the courtyard, the people.
Even all it was is 6 years.
6 years later.
Yeah. And so they're having their conversation. They're the memories of it, and we get Kristen Cole and Aemond, and this is the first time we get to see older Aemond. There he is.
And his skill and how far he's come.
Yep, with the one eye.
Yep. And the brothers are like, oh crap.
And it's interesting that they're now. I don't. For me, it's not really like one way or the other, because obviously they're not trying to kill each other, but they are using real weapons in the scene.
I thought that was a bit odd, considering who it is. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would think it would be wooden. You know what I mean?
And then one of the better parts of this is that he's known the whole time that his nephews were there, because he says, "Nephews, have you come to train?"
And they're like, "Heck no!"
And and it's so funny because at least for me, and I'm sure this was the same for a lot of people. Everyone knows Luke over here and what happened, and that Aemond probably hasn't forgotten, and probably is not over it.
That's not something you forget. And then we get the arrival of Aemond.
Yep. And I like this shot a lot right here.
Yeah.
You can portray a lot with someone being in this very small, confined box almost. There's a lot that gets lost in some. Like with some cinematography, and this show goes kind of above and beyond with certain things, because this is a couple frames that you get to see that, but it's just giving you that little thing in the back of your mind. It's giving you this idea of where Alicent's at right now. So really cool. And this was the moment for me where I was thinking that what's his brother's name again?
Vaemond.
I was like, oh, Vaemond's overstepping. He's making a bad play right here doing this.
Bad move strategically.
Yep.
Even though he's trying to say to the, hand and the queen, hey, if you support me, I'll be forever in your debt. Literally, that's what he says.
And he thinks that they have the control right now, which isn't it's not bad logically.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just coming from like the viewer's perspective, because we get to see we have more insight into some things. Even before we find out what happens, it's just like, oh man, like you're taking the side. You're kind of going against your brother in this situation, his wife. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And then we get this scene of Rhaenyra talking with Rhaenys,
where they're trying to come to an agreement, and she's basically saying, "Hey, I didn't murder your son," even though she thinks that she did. And she's like, "Let's come to a deal. I'll pledge my children to." Your daughter's children, that way it strengthens our houses.
Yep, Driftmark and the throne and the crown stay together essentially.
And it was a good scene when she says to Rhaenyra, is that a desperate offer, or what was it, or I can't remember what she said in this scene. If you can get to it, but
yeah, of course.
Rhaenyra responds with, "What does it matter?"
Here it goes. So she says, "I loved your son.
Yeah.
You may not believe it to be true, but I did. I did not order his death, nor was I complicit in it. I swear this to you." Yeah, it's probably true that she's essentially just lying. She's like telling half truths here.
Yeah.
To kind of because they have to keep up the lie that he's dead.
Right.
But that's why I was kind of like, I wonder. It was just where I kind of questioned it, where I was like, I wonder if she is aware of his current situation. But either way, let's see. Back Luke's claim, and let us betroth Laena's children to mine. Baela will be queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and her sons will be heirs to the throne. Rhaena will rule in Driftmark, and the seat will pass to her and Lucerys' children in time. And she says, a generous offer or a desperate one. And she's like, what does it matter? And it's like, and what's interesting is that this is Rhaenyra's second desperate offer to try to kind of keep things together. Yep. And because she knows where she's at, because you had mentioned earlier how much she wants the throne, but we kind of find out in this episode that she's a little over it.
Yeah.
That she really wishes that her father had just been like, I don't want this. Don't give this
Kept
to
it
me.
for Daemon.
Yeah. And this time it actually does work out. You were right in this, at least. It does not matter. And what you see is that Rhaenyra, whether she still cares about like blood or not, like the bloodline of her family, she really does come more around to like Coriolis' side, that it's like the name is the only thing that matters at the end of the day.
Yep.
The history books will only remember the name.
Yeah.
You can bargain with me all you like. Bring my granddaughter with you to soften my resolve. But tomorrow the High Tower land their first blow. And she knows it, because right now the power is still sitting with the High Towers, because Viserys is out of commission.
Yeah.
And it's great
so she's
setup.
trying to strengthen everything and really solidify backing behind her so that she can confront them head on.
Mm-hmm. And what's great about this is Rhaenyra is just holding their cards. Like she's kind of just waiting to see what happens, and it's a great position for her to be in. So when she says, I must stand alone, which could have been conceived as like maybe she's going to try to take up the seat. Like maybe she thinks she has the best claim. But ultimately, I think what it really comes down to is that she's just holding her cards to see what happens. It's like the power really does lie with Alicent and Otto at the moment.
Yeah. And then we get this next scene between Rhaenyra and her father. And Rhaenyra, Viserys doesn't really fully comprehend everything's going on.
Yeah, he's
everything
confused.
That's going on.
Something they set up in the previous episode.
Yep. And Rhaenyra is really trying to get him to, she's saying, I need you, Father. I need you to be here for me.
Yeah. And it's so interesting with leading up to the next scene, the way you're just like, oh man, like she's done.
Yeah.
Like she's got nothing left. It's like, because you're not thinking that Viserys is going to be able to pull through with this. He's already said like, well, Otto and Alicent take care of that stuff now. Like that's not the whole idea of the succession in this case. It's like they are the ones that have to do that. She says, let's see. Because she says, I thought I wanted it, meaning the throne.
But it's a burden, and it's a heavy one.
It's too heavy.
Yeah.
If you wish me to bear it, then defend me. And this is like such a great moment, because I still was like, I don't know. Maybe it's, his whole, he's too
Maybe
old.
It's too late.
He's too old. He's too weak.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great. I think this, again, talking about night shots that are well lit, and the post-production on him is good. Like the color grade on him is good. Look at this. It's nighttime. You can clearly see everything that's going on, Sapochnik. You could learn a thing or two from this.
Right. But I think the next scene is, he's getting...
This is really good, too.
You see Otto is behind, giving him that milk of the poppy, right? Mm-hmm. And you can tell that Otto is wanting to keep control over everything, but then Viserys refuses it.
And it's really funny because someone mentioned this. Oh, they had asked this in the troll room a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the show. They were asking if the show felt humorless. And we haven't talked about the humor in it, and it's not as much. There aren't as many sort of like clever well, it's not the same thing as like with Marvel, right? You have certain characters like Tyrion who the humor comes from them with their smart quips, the sort of intelligent things that they say occasionally. And it does happen in the show, because I don't know if you remember. I can't remember what character it was. It's one of the like kind of they were part of the council, and they were having a council meeting, and they've moved on from the topic, and the guy's like, well, I think we should, and they were like, we've moved on from that, because it's like the guy's like old and kind of out of his mind. This is another one of those moments that I think it's that clever humor that's much more subtle. This isn't Marvel humor. This isn't the just out there. He says, I want to have supper, Otto. And he says, it is the morning, Your Grace. And he goes, tonight. And you can tell he's like, I'm not, he's like, the whole family are gathered in the Red Keep. I want us to dine together. And it's just a great little thing where it's like Otto is in this situation where he thinks that, like you were saying, that Viserys is completely out of it at this point because of the milk of the poppy. And so I don't know if they confirm it or whether Viserys is the one who decides to stop taking it. But he's clearly, from this point on, he's not taking the milk of the poppy anymore. And it might be actually right here where he decides like, no, I'm not taking it anymore.
Yeah, he does. He said, no, I don't want it.
He says, bring the milk of the poppy. No, just arrange the supper. So it's just that moment where he's gotten some of his clarity back, and something about what was going on with Rhaenyra sunk in, because I thought they were going to have a conversation at the dinner table and be like, enough of this. Like, we're not doing this anymore. Thankfully, they went a completely different direction, and this is one of what a lot of people, and I agree, is one of the best scenes in the show.
And then we get this scene of Otto's finally on the Iron Throne, right?
Yeah.
And making decisions, and Daemon comes in, and he's trying to, proclaim his right to Driftwood, and Rhaenyra interrupts him to combat, what she believes is incorrect in him lying, right, and distorting things. And so she's trying to back her claim. And then we get this lovely scene of Viserys coming in, which I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, so and
they did do a good job of subverting your expectations in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. And so I'm pretty sure she's 33, because I think she was 13, and she says nearly 20 years ago in this she gets cut off, and in comes King Viserys, first of his name, King of the Andals and the
and it's like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the First Men. And it's such a great moment, and I love Daemon.
Fist pumping. You're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I love Daemon. Viserys might, by the end of the season, just cut him out of my favorite character in the show. I won't make up my mind till we get to the end
Viserys
of the season.
Is mine, but yeah, I'll make it up to then. But so far, he's mine, and no shame in saying it. The dude's just trying to love his family and do what's right.
And this is that.
Yes, he has flaws, and he's not one dimensional. But man, you feel for him too, because the man is just going through it on all levels, and it's probably the stress too isn't helping his health.
This episode is so great too, in this scene in particular, because like you look at Rhaenys and the respect she has for him right here, and understanding like the question could be said like, is she thinking about whether she could have been as strong in these moments as he was,
and would she have ended up like him?
Yeah. And then you have Alicent,
decrepit and everything,
who through everything she obviously still cares about him. Right, because like that's not a look of someone like, because there might have been a shot of her right here where she's like, oh crap, what's happening? Oh yeah, she's like, oh crap. But then you have this moment of her where she's clearly conflicted because she cares about the guy. She's been taking care of him for years at this point.
And I think this episode really hints at that it's really Otto that's poisoning Alicent. You know what I mean?
Oh, he is. Yeah, it's kind of why I like him though, because he kind of comes into my mind, like I was saying earlier, where I'm like, man, he might be way more involved in what's going on than I had originally thought, and it wasn't just that he was the hand of the king and trying to get that power, and he might be behind poisoning Viserys, and that he knew it needed to take a lot of time to happen, that there would be too much of a questioning on him if he had like tried to take him out in it when he was younger or something like that, and that his daughter was the right move early on to potentially gain power within with the crown. He comes up, he says, "I will sit today." You get Daemon right here, who's clearly cares about him. He's worried about the guy. It's cool to see.
And he tries to climb the throne, and his crown falls off.
And so this character, by the way, is a twin.
Yeah.
It's mentioned earlier on, because at first it seems like Alicent she's not, they kind of play this thing where she gets the guy's name wrong, and you think like, her. Yeah, and you think that, oh, is she just in this position of like not really caring about these people? But then you find out he's a twin. So it might be playing kind of double that, like it is both things, because that will probably come up later. They don't plant these seeds for no reason. You know what I mean? It's not like they're like, oh yeah, there's just one Kingsguard who's got a twin. It's like, no, these things, they matter.
And, when he tries to help Viserys is like, no, I'll be fine. And then he tries walking up, and his crown falls, and then Daemon comes up and picks it up, and Viserys is like, I'm fine. And he finally has that love from his brother that he's been wanting to help.
Yep.
And it's a call back to Daemon saying to him, we're blood, but you never made me hand. You put me in these other positions from episode 1, right?
Yep.
And apparently this scene was the crown falling off his head was an accident, and Matt Smith did that, was ad-libbing that part.
That's why he's a great actor.
Yeah.
He deserves to be in better things than Morbius.
But then we get this, the famous scene now of...
Hang on. So, they go through the, that he's like, why are we even having this? Like, which I think...
This is already settled.
Excuse me. It's a great little moment because, he's like, what are y'all doing? You're... And when they talk about Viserys not being a good king, this is why one of the reasons why I don't understand, because he understands that the things that they are doing now will probably lead to people dying. It will lead to...
he's trying to prevent war.
He's trying to prevent war. He's trying to keep peace in the kingdom.
And for the entire time he's been king, they've had peace. roughly with the exception of the...
Stuff in the Andals, is that right?
Yeah, the triarchy. The triarchy.
Yeah, the stepstones.
Yep.
And which is still happening. So, but those are small conflicts. Like that's the kind of stuff that's like those things are going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, there's never been there's not all-out war between the houses.
At home.
Yeah, there has been peace. So yeah, she comes up to speak, and this is where we get the moment of her being like, "I'm backing Viserys. It's what my husband probably would have wanted," and talking about that and being like, "This is the best thing," and she knows it. And this is the moment you can say that she's like, she knows exactly what she needs to do to retain the power.
She plays her hand.
And Otto, he's like, crap.
Dang it. And then Vaemond does not like that answer.
Mm-hmm.
I love Aegon's smile. Like Aegon knows what's going on, and he just smirks.
He's just, there's some stuff going on in his head that he's being very patient. He's obviously watching everyone, and he's
I
learning,
don't like
right?
him, but in this scene, I'm like, I get it. I'd be smiling too.
Well, his brother, Aegon, and then his brother
is Aemond.
Yeah, and I was talking about him, like just everything that he does in this episode, you're like, the guy is learning. He's trying to figure things out. He's obviously a wild card, but he's smart. And and that's, I think the whole idea is that they want him and Daemon to kind of be foils for each other. Mm-hmm. Like two characters that are very similar, that are on opposite sides of the conflict.
Yeah.
And then
this is when
it gets taken care of.
And Vaemond says, you don't get to tell me what to do, homeboy. I don't care that you're the king.
He shouldn't have overstepped. He's like, I won't allow
and he's
it.
like the voice of reason, but he oversteps because everyone knows he's right.
Because you don't. Well, the other thing is that you do not question the king's word. You don't do that at all. So it says they're not true Valyrian. I like the line that he says in here, where he says, you may run your house as you see fit, but you will not decide the future of mine. My house survived the doom and 1,000 tribulations besides. And then he says, I will not see it ended on account of this. I love, dude, and he's just like, say it. That look, dude, where he's like,
say it. It's so great, that meme of Kermit the Frog with the hood on the black hood. And it's just, say it.
Yep. And he knows, right? He has this moment where this is where what we talk about. He oversteps. And I guess you could look back and say, like, maybe he doesn't think Daemon is serious with a lot of things, or like he's not aware of like what Daemon's willing to do, unlike the audience. Right. And he says her children are bastards, and he screams it at them.
And then says, and she is a whore.
Yeah. And everyone's like, Ooh.
There's this look. Audible gasp in the room.
Look at his smile, dude.
I know.
I love it.
And then Viserys stands up and says, I will have your tongue. And Daemon says,
boom,
he can keep his tongue.
Yep. Takes him out. I want that sword. That's really cool.
Such a poignant scene.
That sword is called Dark Sister, I'm pretty sure.
But yeah, great
very
scene.
metal. Yeah.
Probably this, man, it's hard to say which one is the best scene. And then,
this
Otto's
too,
like,
again.
Get that man. And Daemon says, no need.
It's just so cool, like really thinking about what's going on in Aemond's head through all of this.
Yeah.
Because there's a sense, I got a sense of like respect for Daemon in the situation. He's like kind of like, I like this guy. Like, I like the way that he, carries himself. That's at least the way I was kind of reading into it. There's something that he sees in him that he's like, all right. Because clearly, like he doesn't. I would imagine we'll get some sort of indication of how much he really doesn't respect his brother. Later on. Anyway, so after all this goes down, like it's too much for Viserys, and they take him away. We get the scene with that this whole thing going on, and it's kind of just like some interesting
dialogue
and
she's
into
like,
her
hey,
mindset. She's like, because he's like, oh, it's bad luck to look upon the dead or something like that, and she's basically like,
I've already had it.
Death doesn't care whether I look upon it at this point. He says he cares little whether my eyes are open or closed, which is pretty cool. So
and then we get the dinner scene next, right?
Yeah, and you just get this like look from her where it's like, I wonder what's going on in her head. Very cool, very cool. Yes, the dinner scene.
Everyone rises when Viserys come in. He's in bad shape, and he decides to stand up. And oh wait, not just yet. He's saying, "How good is it to see you all tonight?"
So yeah, and kind of reaffirming again, like this is what's going to happen.
He said earlier.
Yeah. I'm the king. It's like, don't. Yeah, it's like you guys are not supposed to be questioning this. And so you get the scene where everyone, whether they're being honest or not, they're trying to sort of make amends, whether it's just to put on a front for Viserys because most of the people in this room actually care about him, and kind of understand the way that they're supposed to be acting. But of course, you have Aegon here, and he's making fun of Jace for his husbandly duties to come. Really, which is great. I mean, it's adding to his character as far as showing like he's a piece of crap. Like the guy's he's not a good person. We already saw that with the interaction with the girl from earlier, and just getting a little bit more of that. And
Viserys like knocks his cane on the ground. Like, it saddens my heart. It gladdens and fills my heart with sorrow to see, y'all together and fighting, essentially.
Yeah, they've grown distant from each other. And then you get this final kind of like thing. He's like, my own face is no longer a handsome one, which is a great little like joke.
If it ever was.
Yep. It's that little bit of self-deprecating humor because he kind of knows the situation he's in and trying to stay light of it for the family despite everything that's going on.
And he's like, I will probably not live much longer.
Yeah.
He's very aware of his state and who he is. and so I wish you to see me as I am. And he talks about, I'm your father, your husband, your grandsire.
Just trying to keep the family together, doing whatever he can. And it's just, this is why I appreciate Viserys as a character, because he's smart enough and he knows enough to be able to be like, this is what's best for the realm. Stop with the infighting. It's like, you guys need to put these things aside, because the Targaryen name and the strength of the household is the most important thing.
Well, think about when it's going to be, the Targaryen household can only fall from the inside out, and so it's going to be fighting amongst each other will then lead to outside forces being able to come in and overtake the throne. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And that's what he knows. And so then right after this is when Rhaenyra, because she loves him, stands up and apologizes to the queen and says, hey, I know that you've have stayed by my father and loved him, as best as you could, and you've been loyal to him. Yeah,
and that's, so you get what, at least for now, in Viserys, sort of at the end of Viserys' life, you get this moment of the two of them attempting to fix the problems, which is something that you've seen throughout the show, where the two of them they've had their differences, they've had their they butted heads, and then it's always kind of come around. You could probably, I'd have to go back and watch the show, but Viserys has probably had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And his influence. And she says, you'll make a fine queen. She's like, all right, you're going to become queen. It's like, it's probably a good move on her part to hopefully have her family stay together and her children be kept alive. Because that's the thing that we don't really know, and we'll have to talk about if we get some more details once the season's over, about whether Rhaenyra ever had the intention of harming Alicent's family, like Otto was saying, or whether she might have just been like, you know what?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, it's like
and I really gotta say, I enjoy after this. Alicent says, "Yeah, this warms my heart," but then, because Aegon says what he says, what happens next? It's Luke stands up, right? Or is that Jace?
Jace does.
Jace. And makes a speech, doesn't he?
No, I don't think so. So
he gets mad, like he's going to do something.
Yeah, because he says he's basically
disrespectful to his betrothed.
Yeah,
to Baela, and
he might say something in here. But it's just that Aemond gets up because he's like waiting for the confrontation, And
you see Jace learn, and he does that little hit, and he's like, to Prince Aegon and Aemond, I have fond memories of our shared youth.
It's really good. Just a little snipes at each other.
It really is.
Okay, and here's the line.
Yeah,
because it's why I just find her to be such an interesting character, despite this kind of just being, she's not the most like, what would you say, like three-dimensional character. She's playing a role.
She doesn't have a lot of screen time,
right? But what they've done a really good job with her and setting her up and kind of her personality in all of these different things. Even though she's not as much of a major character, at least not for now. But she says, "Beware the beast beneath the boards,"
and it's just kind of random and like, what?
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is she's such a good character,
goofy, off character, but not goofy in the sense of
no.
Go ahead.
What I was getting at is that for the audience, she's such an interesting character because you're getting these little insights to like the future, because by now, hopefully the people who are watching the show have realized like she can see into the future, and everyone thinks she's crazy and that she's basically off of her rocker and that she just says these random things because there's something wrong with her, when in reality she's giving you a taste of the things to come, and that because they're not listening to her, because they don't understand what's going on with her, they're completely oblivious to all of that. And it's just kind of a cool thing to have from someone who's just watching the show.
Right.
So yeah, everybody's doing their... Oh, I like this line too, where she gets up and she said, I would like to toast Baela and Rhaena. They'll be married soon. it isn't so bad. Mostly he just ignores you, except
And
sometimes
gets
when
drunk.
he's drunk.
Yeah.
And then like his face, he's like, oh Lord. Because it's like everybody knows just like how much of a joke he is. And yeah, it works pretty well.
Yeah, and his character. And they know who he is. And then Viserys is like, good, let's have some music. And then doesn't Aemond stand up and decide to give a... Oh, no, then Jace decides to dance with his wife to get back at him.
Yep. And they're having
so
like such a
great.
good time. And what a great move too. So it's like instead of stabbing back at him, he knows exactly what he needs to do by essentially just being kind to Aegon's wife.
Yeah.
Also his sister, by the way. So and you get this moment of
Everyone having some joy and just a good family camaraderie.
An interesting thing, and I don't know if this is true or not because I don't know if there's enough evidence for this, but people have said that they think that this is Viserys' point of view where he sees all these people laughing and smiling and being happy. And then there's moments where maybe that isn't what's going on. I don't really think that's the case necessarily. I'm trying to see if there's like maybe we can resolve this. No, and so he starts feeling bad, and everyone. I think it's no. Okay, I'm gonna go with I think that this is exactly we're seeing. Yeah, it's genuine. We're seeing what's actually happening with everyone. Yeah. I thought that was a potentially interesting theory about he's at this point in his life he's trying to see things through his own lens. But I know I think they are legitimately happy, and then they see him getting weak. They leave, and this is such a great moment. Where the two of them, because the pig
he just smiles at him.
Because I can't remember if it was, I think it was episode 4 maybe, where they give Aemond a pig as a dragon.
Yeah, did they send out the roasted pig and put it right
in front of him? And I don't think
he's also the one that cut his eye too.
Yep. And so he just has this look, and that's when he knows, because he knows he's got a certain amount of like power in the situation because of what they did, and that he's also really confident in himself again because he's a good fighter.
And he
has
Vagar too as well. So not only is he a good fighter, but he has Vagar.
And it's really cool to go back through some of these frames, because then you have this moment with Daemon too, where Daemon is actually kind of like intrigued by him as well, I think.
Yeah.
And he says, Jace, Luke, and Joffrey, each of them handsome, wise,
and strong.
And she says, Aemon. And it says, let us drain our cups to these 3 strong boys. And he, that's that moment where it's like, dare you to say it again. It says, why? 'Twas only a compliment. Do you not think yourself strong?
And then he punches him, and his face just moves. That's it.
Where is
showing his strength.
I think it's right here. You go. It's like, I can play this for a couple seconds. Boom. Doesn't barely does anything to him. And then he gets up, and the younger one, of course, who has a lot of anger, like they're still showing that, like that consistency in the character,
is getting beat up by
his emotions overwhelm him. He's that wild card. He's the one who's trying, just like Daemon. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to get under people's skin. Daemon, of course, stepping in. And I love the strength, like the way that Matt Smith carries himself and the kind of strength that he has in these situations where it's like he doesn't have to do a lot.
No.
Go to the
corners.
Then
he looks at Aemond and just smiles and laughs.
Yeah, and he just kind of looks at him, and he's like, all right, man, like...
We're done.
And there's probably a bit of respect there where he's like, I know what you're doing. It's like, time to stop.
Just that little smirk and laugh. Just so great.
Yep.
And then we get this meaningful moment that really sealed, I think it was has been auto poisoning Alicent, and you get this just peaceful, serene genuine moment between Alicent and Rhaenyra, where Alicent is like, I want you to stay.
Yeah, and she says, I'll see them home and then return with my dragon. And the king and I would both like that.
But, I forgot about this scene. You get Wormwood comes in. I think that's her name.
White Worm.
White Worm, that's it. And I'm like, oh, is that Daemon? Before I was like, is that gonna be Daemon? And then it's it's a servant in the house.
I thought it might have been Daemon too. I was like, what's going on here? We've seen her before. She's aware of the situation with Aegon. So and it's really just set up because now it's kind of like, all right, what's her play in all of this.
Yeah.
We haven't seen her for a long time. We know she's got potentially still has some beef with Daemon, but maybe that's not her play. Maybe she doesn't really, it's like maybe she's got other motivations behind what she's doing at this point.
Right.
So, and then we have the end. Before we get there, Alicent has this conversation with Viserys.
Which Viserys is confused and thinks it's Rhaenyra.
And which is, again, talking about setup, even in the previous episode where he calls Alicent by his previous wife's name.
Mm-hmm.
Just that little hint of things to come. It's just more television needs to do this.
Yes.
Just these little subtle things in here. And she is either, and it's not clear, right? I guess we'll probably get some confirmation of this in the next episode, whether Alicent believes that Aegon, her son, is supposed to be the heir, like she just outright believed him,
right?
Or if she's going to use that as a tool, because it was said, and she can play ignorant and be like, on his deathbed, he said Aegon is the prince. He's the one who should take over rule.
Even though he was meaning
to unite the realm.
What he told to Rhaenyra in episode 2.
Yeah. Talking about the prince who was promised, who
take on the White Walkers.
Yeah, forgive me. I'm pretty sure Jon Snow is the prince that was promised.
Yeah.
You must do this. And so basically he wanted Rhaenyra to unite the kingdom to keep them together because of the coming problem. And she's going to take that and use it in the wrong way. Yeah. Because she says, I understand. And she leaves. And you have the dagger, and of course it's leading back to it. I was pretty critical of the whole Song of Ice and Fire thing in this. And I don't know where I stand on it yet. Them bringing this up and making it not a major part of the show, but it's been weaved into it. Yeah. And I don't necessarily care that they're using this as sort of that turning point for Alicent to try to take power. Because whatever it turns out to be, however this scene turns out with her later on, I was fine with it. I just don't know where they're headed with it in the future, and I'm kind of hoping they don't go like too deep into the White Walker territory in the series, and that it's kind of just addressing for the things to come. I'm a little more fine with that than anything else, but we'll see, man.
It's going to really mess with the lore if they do.
Man, I'm hoping that they do not do not go too deep into some of the beyond the wall like
stuff.
Yeah, the White Walkers and all that. So we'll see.
Then we get this last scene of Viserys saying, "No more, please."
Yeah, and it cuts, and he says, "My love," which I guess I cut off. Hang on, I think I can grab it. Give me a second. Right there. Yeah, there's just this. It goes blank, and he has this one final. Hang on, crap. I'm gonna get it. I don't want it. There it is. So he says, "My love," and it's just the final little thing.
Send off of him.
Yep. Still really happy with the show.
Yeah, me too. Can't recommend it yet till season 1's over with. I mean, but so far,
I know for sure I'm going to be watching the whole thing over once it's done.